Oh, here we go. We have a little bit of a getting everything set up here, and we are now live. Hey, everybody, anybody who's happened to be out there watching us right now, this is Boss Rush. Here we are, Friday. What are we, September 6th, 2024. And yeah, looking forward to jumping into a bit of some Boss Rush. Today, my name is Chris Melissinos. I'm the principal evangelist for video games here at AWS. And yeah, my co-hosts are away right now. They are doing a whole variety of different things. I know that Dean is on the road, as is Mark DeLaura, and Susan Cummings, she is away as well. So it's just going to be me hanging out there. And yeah, I figured I would just go ahead and make sure that we kept at least the stream going again for this week. I apologize for last week's. I had a bit of a family emergency that I had to go ahead and take care of. Fortunately, all good, all good. And so it was an audio-only podcast or live stream for last week. But this week, we're live. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and fire up the chat over here. Make sure that I'm not missing any messages from anybody that happens to be joining us here today on Boss Rush. What I would also mention is we're going to try a little experiment. I am going to, yeah, there is Elio. Hey there, buddy. Hey, how are you? Good to see you. We are going to go ahead and try a little bit of live streaming magic today as well. So if you would like to go ahead and join in live on the live stream, go ahead and hit me on messaging there on LinkedIn, and I'll go ahead and shoot you over a code and go ahead and get you in to the live stream today so we can have a discussion. So yeah, please go ahead and join us. Also, if you could go ahead and repost this feed that we're live to your social feeds, that would be great. And Elio, I believe that the audio sounds good and clear. So you let me know in the chat if it does. No echoes, no echoes, no echoes. Please, me. Oh my goodness, look who it is. It is our good friend Rick Neal. Heck yeah, buddy. Let me go ahead and get you set up that. And all right, we're going to go and experiment and see how this works today. So yeah, let me find Mr. Rick Neal. That's right. Everything is fine and shipping on time. That is always the way Mr. Neal chooses to address his work. Okay, Rick, I am sending you the link right now. Let me see. Here we go. And the password. And yeah, let's see if we can get Mr. Neal to join us today. Anybody else who wants to go ahead and join, go ahead and hit me. Send me a message right there on LinkedIn Messenger, and I'll go ahead and forward you over. Let's see how many people we can get in and just have a conversation with each other, which would be a lot of fun. So, all right. Yeah, let me head on. Let's go ahead and head on over to our browser page and make sure that we've got our browser up and running there. Where are we there? There is where's our Firefox page? Here we go. Here's our Firefox page. And let's go ahead and fire up a little bit of Venture Beat, or Games Beat, I should say. And yeah, check out some of the news that they have been reporting on this week. Let's see. What do we have here? All right, let's head on over to the browser and see what the top stories are while we're waiting for Mr. Neal to go ahead and join us on the program today. All right. So let's see here. What have we got? And this is going to be a tricky one because I'm going to try to monitor two different chat windows and manage our the folks joining in on the live stream. So it's going to be it'll be an interesting experiment today. How many things can I juggle before stuff goes ahead and breaks? That's going to be the real question today. But we'll see. We'll see what we can go ahead and get done. Also, if there's any news topics that you want to go ahead and discuss, make sure you go ahead and drop them in the chat so we know. Um, all right. Let's see. Who do we have here? We have Mr. Neil, who is chosen a different camera setting. And let's see if he can go ahead and get that camera right. While he is going ahead and doing that, I'm going to go ahead and check out some of the biggest news we had here. Of course, one of the biggest ones, and we're going to scroll down here because I know it was about 2 weeks ago. Let's see. Yeah, Rick, you go ahead and you get your webcam set up, and then I'll go ahead and get you in here to the live stream. Let's see. Miston Labs index specs for SUI Play 0x1 Web3 gaming handheld. I feel like we've discussed this one before, right? This is one that has been ripping around there for a little while. I'm not quite certain yet about having a Web3 kind of dedicated device around gaming. I'm a huge fan of dedicated consoles, dedicated handhelds. I have a ton of them, more than I really should admit. But tying the operation of the platform to Web3 remains to be seen. Miston Labs, a Web3 company supporting the SUI blockchain, has launched pre-orders for the SUI Play 0x1 gaming handheld. Miston Labs has also unveiled its updated specs, powered by Playtron's device agnostic gaming operating system. Okay, we'll have to see what that is all about. Let's see, Rick, are you able to get your camera up and running there, buddy? Let's see. Pre-orders of the device are now open until all available units have been sold out. Priced at $600 plus shipping and tax. Device can be purchased with SUI tokens, so on and so forth. Let's see. The first 1,000 customers to pre-order a SUI Play device receive a soul-bound, non-fungible token NFT. We'll have to check and see exactly what that's all about. Which will provide special access, rewards, and perks. Delivery of pre-ordered devices will begin in 2025. Some updated specs on it. I mean, it looks like a pretty capable, mobile platform. But yeah, again, it remains to be seen exactly what you're going to be able to do with it. I'm not super familiar with everything that they're doing there. I've been, like I said, I was away for about a week, jumped back in, spent another crazy week this week. And so I'm still catching up on the news as well. So if there's news, articles, stories, things like that you want to discuss, go ahead and pop them into the chat. So I know. And I think, no, we're all good there. We're all good there. All right, so that is the first one. Let's go ahead and see what happens when we, let's see if we can't get Rick into here. Let's see what happens when we bring our guest screen in. And there we go. So let's see, Rick, can we hear you? Can you hear us? Not sure if we can get Rick in here. It seems as if he's having some issues. So yeah, so we've got this whole nice big space open. So any other guests want to go ahead and join, please go ahead and hit me again in Messenger and let me know. And we'll go ahead and bring you in here. So why do we have, let's go ahead and have him hang up and see if we can't get him in again in a moment. So let's head back over to the news page here and yeah, check in on some more gaming news from GamesBeat and VentureBeat there. Okay. So yeah, anyway, again, remains to be seen. I'm not sure exactly how many people are going to buy a device just to go ahead and have games that can go ahead and use blockchain currency directly on the device. Not sure. Not sure, right? It remains to be seen. Interesting experiment. And I do believe, it's important that we experiment with all of these things to make sure that, we're not missing opportunities to drive new types of gameplay, new types of revenue, new types of experiences, all of those things. So yeah, really, really cool. Well, very interesting. Really cool. Remains to be seen, but definitely very interesting. Let's see. All right. Big news for this week. Cirrus Logic hits 40 years making mixed signal chips. Cirrus Logic, a publicly traded, and Cirrus Logic, when I hear that name, man, it brings me all the way back to earlier PC computing days. For sure, for sure. Cirrus Logic, a publicly traded chip maker focused on mixed signal processing, is celebrating its 40th birthday. And we think about the trajectory of the games industry. We think about, well, not just the games industry, but technology industries in general. Cirrus Logic, man, is one of those stalwarts. Obviously, 40 years of chips and processing. You saw at a time when we were developing, new motherboards and graphics cards and all this other kind of stuff. So it's lovely to see that they're still kicking it, and it's their 40th birthday. Over the past 4 decades, Cirrus Logic has consistently pushed the boundaries of technology, delivering groundbreaking solutions that have transformed the audio and electronics industries. Yeah, very, very cool. Other brands from way back in the day, of course, are Adlib and Citrix and all these other brands that, whenever I see the logo or see the name, oh, man, it just makes me long for the earlier days of computer technology. Not really. I mean, we have awesome technology today, but there was a beauty in that those early eras where we were figuring out technology. Miracles seem to happen every other week in the technology space, and again, really good to see that they are still kicking it. In our 40-year history, Cirrus Logic has revolutionized the audio and mixed signal processing landscape, consistently delivering cutting-edge solutions to the leading customers in each market we participate in, said Carl Alberti, Vice President of Mixed Signal Products at Cirrus Logic. From pioneering the first audio chips in desktop PCs to setting new standards with high-performance audio's haptic sensing, camera, battery, and power solutions, our relentless innovation continues to shape the future of mobile and consumer applications. So happy 40th birthday to Cirrus Logic. So yeah, wonderful, wonderful. All right, what other news stories has Dean and the team over there at VentureBeat deliver for us? PlayVS introduced Stadium, digital first esports competition platform. Super interesting. I was actually having a conversation with colleagues about how to deliver in stadium kind of experiences to esports fans that are not in a stadium, right, setting, or can't get there. And we think about, the opportunity to engage new audiences that are esports fans, and we want to create that sense of community and sense of fandom, but outside the stadium. Having platforms like this, which we're going to go ahead and take a look at, is going to be super important. PlayVS, which pioneered esports at high schools and middle schools in North America, announced its Stadium project, a digital-first esports competition platform designed to cater to a wide audience, including community groups, organizations, and informal teams, said John Chapman, CEO of PlayVS, in an interview with GamesBeat. Let's see. What is it? Stadium was built for a broader audience, including groups, community organizations, gaming enthusiasts seeking a platform for organizing and participating in competitions of their own. It was designed for those who want the freedom to game without institutional constraints. So teams are not required to have an institutional affiliate or designated coach. Yeah, democratizing esports, democratizing competitive gameplay. Super, super awesome. I do love that. I do love that. So yeah, really cool. Now, if we can marry those types of things to, let's say, movie theaters or to local stadiums, right? School stadiums and things like that, where you can create that kind of stadium type of event or effect without having people having to go to major cities and spend all of that money, right? You start to create that community and that fandom in local spaces. And I think that's awesome. Something that we should absolutely lean into. Because one of the things I think is really important when we talk about the trajectory of video games and their history, right, is the social element of this. And it's again, in another conversation I was having with friends, back when you were in an arcade, there was kind of this unspoken social dynamic that came up, right? About proximity to other people and the way you lined up to play games and all this other stuff, right? And they are a physically social experience. Not that they have to solely be that, right? Of course, online gameplay has opened up, access and connection to people all over the world, which is just absolutely incredible. But there's still, an in-present IRL component to playing games that if we can facilitate through platforms like this and then leverage that into physical spaces will be awesome, right? And create new opportunities for people to get together and play, which I think is super important. Super, super important. Let's see. There's some other blockchain stuff there. Okay, here's a big one, right? SAG-AFTRA union announces deal for AI protections on 80 video games. I hadn't read about this, but obviously this has been a huge point of contention, not just in the game space, but in the media sphere overall. 80 games have signed SAG-AFTRA's tiered budget interim agreements, a sign that the entertainment union said proves that its provisions, which include common sense AI protections, are fair and achievable. The union's been on strike against the major game developers since July, and these interim and tiered agreements provide enjoyment opportunities to members during the work stoppage. This deal will allow members to work, but does not mean the strike is completely over. The actual AI protections are also not described in any detail yet. So we're finding our way forward, right? And this is about fair and equitable access to people's content, personas, skills, things that they were trained for. And so as we move into a world where AI is going to basically impact every form of technology, information, platform, media that we consume, it's important to understand how we can go ahead and still, protect the rights of individuals and creators. And so this is another step in that direction, and it's good, right? They're just having the conversation now, and that's great. So it'd be interesting to continue to watch that and track that as it goes forward. At 15, trivia crack creator Entermax has surpassed 800 million downloads. Yeah, do you remember playing Trivia Crack? I remember, when it first launched and was playing it. Entermax launched hit game Trivia Crack in 2013, and now the company is celebrating 15th anniversary. Okay, so what's interesting about the way this article title is written, it sounds like the creator of Trivia Crack was 15 years old. But no, at 15, Trivia Crack. So yeah, that confused me for a second. I was like, that is an older looking 15-year-old, right? That's what video games does to you. It ages you rapidly. Video game development. And now the company is celebrating 15th anniversary, having grabbed its stake for the Buenos Aires, Argentina-based company in the local games business. Along with Word Crack, Trivia Crack is still popular today. It's generated more than 800 million downloads, or enough for 1 in every 10 people in the world. That is phenomenal. It also shows the power of games not having to be, render crushing sort of experiences. They can just be simply games that people want to go ahead and play together and provide a platform for connection and play. And that's exactly what Trivia Crack does, right? It's trivia, and we do that in trivia nights at bars, and we do that in trivia across the in our household. And so yeah, again, finding an audience that you can scale to doesn't always have to be about creating the next big AAA style game. It can be a game. Let me flip that. It's not necessarily about a AAA style game. It's about a AAA sized audience. That is what you want to go after. And Trivia Crack proved that it can do that. So fantastic for them. Happy 50th and 15th anniversary to Entermax, creators of Trivia Crack. So yay. Let's see. Here we go. I am so freaking excited for the new Indiana Jones game. I cannot wait for this game. I'm a massive Indiana Jones nerd, big Star Wars nerd as well. And so, yeah, let's check out this article here. Perhaps the biggest game of the giant Gamescom Expo, which drew 335,000 fans to Cologne, Germany, was Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, a game being published this fall by Microsoft Bethesda division and developed by Sweden's Game Machine. I spoke with Ariel Torellis, creative director, and Jens Anderson, game designer, Machine Games. After seeing the preview for Indiana Jones, the Great Circle, their studio made major games for Bethesda in the past, like the Wolfenstein series, and now their game is coming on December 9th on the PC and Xbox Series X and S. It struck me they'd created an amazing first-person shooter. Let's see. The most appealing thing was just being able to work on such an iconic classic IP. And man, that is an iconic nerd IP, right? He added later, it's obvious early on that certain aspects we might have indulged in earlier projects wouldn't be a good fit for this project. This time around, it's more of a Machine Games adventure rather than a Machine Games shooter. It's still very much a Machine Games game. I'm not entirely familiar with their entire catalog, so I'll take it at their word that is a good thing for them. Also, do you read Axel Torvinus as Linus Torvalds? How many years has been in development? Quite a few. That's a good obfuscated number. I think we're somewhere in the region of 4 years for some people, right? So that means the size of the team is ebbing and flowing there. So some appeal to being able to kill Nazis again. It's appealing for a lot of different reasons, right? The most appealing thing was just being able to work on such an iconic classic IP, of course. Feels like you toned down the violence for the Indiana Jones style. Exactly. It became very obvious to us early on in the process. We started dissecting the IP and take apart the character. What is this world? What is the world we're entering? What do we want to craft within it? It was obvious early on that certain aspects we might have indulged in earlier projects. Would it be a good fit for this project? It was obvious in the early days where we needed to go. So it sounds like they're focusing on stuff that's going to be more PG-13 than R, which is great because if you may or may not know this, but Indiana Jones, the original Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark was the movie that the PG-13 rating was created for. Steven Spielberg had that rating created just for that movie. And that kind of set off the whole thing, right? And so, right, it fit directly into a broad segment of the market while still not distilling down all of the grittiness of an Indiana Jones character. So anyway, you can go read the rest of the article over there in GameSpeed. I cannot wait. Again, there have been some not so good Indiana Jones games in the past. There have been some incredible ones like The Fate of Atlantis, right? Yeah, that one is a big one, big banger. Really, really good, fantastic adventure game. Maybe we'll have to go and play through some of that on Rewind. That I think would be a good one, just to go ahead and play a point-and-click adventure and perhaps take suggestions from audience members as to what to click on and where to go. That would be a lot of fun to do. So yeah, all right, let's see how they balance that. Yeah, so let's scroll on down here. And also, what big news have you heard or you find is most interesting right now? Go ahead and pop it into the chat if you have any recommendations. And we'll go ahead and get to that. Or if you want to go in and join live here and just have a conversation, let's go. Just join us there. Join us, and we're going to go ahead and be able to pipe you in. I don't know what happened to Rick. He was joining and then unfortunately just disconnected. So all right, let's see. Oh, that's interesting. U.S. remains the leader in casual game ad spending, right? State of media buyer. And, we like to make sure we're covering, business topics on this as well. Let's face it, right? In the mobile space, advertising is the lifeblood of, many companies there, microtransactions. And in the U.S., it is certainly more prevalent. So the U.S. solidified its position as the top global market for app advertised with game ad spending increasing by 0.46% year over year, despite a highly competitive landscape. State of Gaming's buying report, Mintragold covered the state of ad spending in casual games for the time from the second half of 2023 to the first half of 2024. The report said video ads reign supreme across all genres, with match 3 games leading the way in adoption, reflecting the format's effectiveness in driving player engagement. super important here. Like when we're talking about advertising, there's a lot of different ways to go ahead and communicate to the public, communicate to your base, um, products and services that may align with who they are. Ad networks for mobile have notoriously been kind of shallow. You don't typically see um, large brands outside of the game space that advertise within them. Part of it has to do with how games are tracked and kind of the kind of compulsion loop that mobile games drive and the type of audience you go after. What is interesting here, right, is that video ads reign supreme. And I would imagine, without even reading the rest of this, that video also leans into rewarded advertising, right? So watch this video ad for 15 seconds and we're going to give you X number of coins, tokens, level skips, assistance, what have you. And what a lot of research has shown is that that becomes a real fair trade value for a lot of consumers, because if they're going to have to sit there and wait for the ad anyway, or they don't want to spend that dollar, they'll go ahead and spend it in being advertised to. Also, when we talk about match 3 games leading the way, yeah, the biggest, widest audience for mobile games are those, again, match 3 type of games, those lightweight puzzle type of games, because they cross every demographic. And because the loop that a lot of those games fall into are very short bursts, but you do it multiple times a day. So you have more bites at the apple, if you will, right? In terms of advertiser communicating to a very broad audience. So that's none of those numbers are surprising, except for the fact that U.S. leads the way. I guess that was just a touch surprising. I do want to also make sure that, let's see, that we find and talk about. Well, let's go ahead and head on over to another site that I do like to frequent, of course, gamesindustry.biz. We don't have Dean with us today. We don't have Mark. We don't have Susan, as I said at the start here. Dean is out and about. Mark is actually traveling for work as well. And Susan is out there, has meetings as well. So it's just me flying solo today with those of you that decide to spend any amount of your time of day with me. And I appreciate that, of course. So yeah, there was of course, Concord. I haven't read about it yet. I understand that it launched and then was shut down pretty rapidly. I'd love any opinions on that. If anyone had a chance to go ahead and play it, or later comment if you're viewing this at a later date, commenting on that. That'd be really interesting to know and understand. Let's see. Dutch Game Garden shutting down next year. Yeah, unfortunately, I did hear about this. We still, although we haven't seen the same amount of layoffs that we have in previous months, right? Those seem to be coming to a slowdown. Unfortunately, we still do have some companies that are still adjusting right now. So, soft landing and best wishes, and of course reach out to any developers that are going to be affected in that shutting down of the studio. Let's see, we already did the SAG-AFTRA discussion. Where is the rest of our news today? Raccoon Logic, let people own the game they bought. Alex Hutchin reached out to say microtransactions are not a healthy way to keep games alive. Interesting, a point of view, and there's multiple ways to look at this, right? Without even reading this, a lot of you that have been in the industry for a long enough period of time know where kind of microtransactions came from, right? And it came from the way the economics around mobile games that were then encroaching on desktop or console games kind of started to butt up against each other. And then once, people, mass consumers had it in their mind to that everything on the phone should be driven to the dollar, right? To the 99 cents model, which was something that, Apple earlier on popularized. the industry was kind of at a crossroads and said, look, we can't afford to make the type of games that really flex the power of these machines if that's the number that we're going after. And a lot of people expect things to be free there. So how can we go ahead and provide additional value to these games that are going to be priced very low, that need to be priced low to be competitive? And so that is where we kind of saw the growth of microtransactions, specifically around mobile, start to happen. And we saw that kind of model matriculate out into other forms of games, from PCs to consoles. But so long as the core game is there, my feeling is, the microtransactions are there to allow you to accelerate through a game, to allow you to express your own fandom and your own tastes, right, inside of game by buying skins or buying these things. And even if they don't provide a distinct advantage to you in playing the game, it's an expression of yourself. And so I view those as just kind of a sunk fandom cost, right? If you go buy a new phone and then you can just go ahead and get a clear case for it. That'd be pretty cheap. But no, sometimes you may search around for a nicer looking case that has a particular style or flair to it, right? You are adorning that device or imbuing it with the things that speak to you or about you. Same thing with, stickers on your notebook or, any other way that we express kind of ourselves in the things that we love, right? In the fandom that we have. And that's where microtransactions really come in. Now, there are places where we've seen egregious, right? Or aggressive models around microtransactions where sometime, and I remember it was really earlier on in mobile games, where you may be playing a puzzle type game, and you're like, there's no way that it just happened in the board. Like, the algorithm that's been driving the game, like it should have looked like this, or this should have happened. And so you can kind of see where the developer may have been cheating the system to kind of force the player into that pressure space where they then like, fine, I need to get past this. I don't want to grind it for another 3 hours. Here's the dollar, let me go. Right. But I think by and large, the microtransaction piece, and we look for very large scale games that really lean into it, is about expressing yourself in the space. And if you have the disposable income to do so, do it, right? So let people own the game they bought. Yes, they can own the game that they bought. And again, this is not even reading the article. So now let's see if I'm completely off base here. In the modern world, to make your money back, you often do need to keep re-releasing it. We know companies that re-release, their stalwart or, their tentpole franchises over and over again, and we keep buying them. Let's see, referring to the previous title, Journey to the Savage Planet, developed by Typhoon Studios, which debuted on Google's Stadia streaming service, later came to consoles and received an expanded edition that bundled the DLC. The modern world, to make your money back, often you need to keep re-releasing it. Having a way to get it out there again in 6 months or a year, maybe updated, maybe on new platforms, all this sort of stuff means you keep the game alive, and so you give yourself a better chance for success. Consensus among major game firms seems to be that microtransaction and other forms of generating content or recurrent consumer spending are the way to keep games alive. Yeah, well, I don't think it's a healthy way to do it. And for some games, I think that's absolutely correct, right? It may not be a healthy way to do it. Like any good joke has a little bit of a barb in it. Those are the things in the industry that we don't like. Let's see, what does it say here? Revenge of Savage Planet ends with a string of tongue-in-cheek marketing taglines, including no DRM, no AI content, no metaverse, no microtransactions. Being, again, a little tongue-in-cheek there, which is great. Companies have to come up with the alternative models because the development of costs have gotten so high. Absolutely true. And we're seeing that across the board, from AAA games kind of all the way down. I think it was The Verge. No, I forget. Maybe it was The Verge. One of the news outlets actually posted a thing about the fact that video games are so, quote unquote, easy to develop, meaning the cost of tools, the cost of getting out to a broad market has dropped to such has gotten to such an approachable degree by a mass audience, means that so much content is coming out there that you're now competing with. And as we've seen, companies like Embracer Group actually state publicly that, hey, the cost of developing AAA games are way too high. And we're also seeing, indie studios that are able to go ahead and release a game that didn't necessarily have a AAA budget, but are pulling in AAA numbers, are continuing to grow, right? And so they do need to find new ways to go ahead and monetize that content, because games are at a distinct disadvantage against pretty much every other form of media that we have out there in the world today. Because if I'm able to go ahead and pull together $100 million to make a movie, and you get, you know, well-known actors in there, you get a really good writer in there. 100 million actually kind of feels on the low side nowadays. And you put that in there, then you go ahead and you create the movie, and then you export it to one of 3 different, video formats, and now it goes everywhere without having to go ahead and port the movie to individual devices or to different frameworks. If you've got an H.264, 265 capable device, it plays every movie out there. And every Marvel movie you can play on your phone all the way to your big screen, and you don't lose anything in the translation between those platforms. Games don't work that way, as we know. And so for every device that we want to go ahead and bring it out to, we have to go ahead and make sure that we port and test and optimize for them, even with cross-platform engines and cross-platform distribution. So games are at a complete, distinct disadvantage over every other form of media. Yet it's still grown to become the largest revenue-producing and engaging form of content that we have in the world today. So I do love that, right? And so, we do have to find a way to make sure that developers can feed their families, pay their mortgages, have enough money to live their lives, and go ahead and put back into the company to make more games, right? And so I don't have the answer for that. None of us have the complete answer for that, but we have, these ideas around it. But the idea about owning games, let them own the game that they bought being the operative word. If it's full price title, but it's only cloud stream, this walking through the door. If someday that game no longer is operating there, you're out that money that you paid. So I do believe, and I'm a person who still buys physical media. I buy games that I really want to keep for a long time. I buy the physical versions of those if they're available. And I back up the games that I buy digitally to make sure that I don't lose access to those things, right? If a service goes down. So I do think it's important to let people own, quote unquote, the game that they bought. Watching games that you play for a while and then disappear off of a streaming service feels different, right, than a movie going away or a TV series going away. Although we've seen that backlash actually happen in the media space. I think it was maybe 2 years ago. Or maybe just last year, actually. And I forget the series that was being run, but people had bought the digital version of this television series. The parent company basically wound all of that down and basically told customers, oh, that thing you thought that you owned, you don't own, right? It's no longer going to be available to you. And actually, I'll draw one more point with regard to that. Years ago at the Penny Arcade Expo, and my goodness, I had been going there. Actually, Mark Delora and I were both speakers at, I think it was like the second or third PAX in Seattle, which was amazing to see just how small it was then and just how big, the industry has become today, or the conference has become today. But I was actually sitting on a panel with lawyers talking about rights and what consumers own from a rights perspective, what developers own, that type of thing. And there was just this misunderstanding of the law versus, and I'm not a lawyer, so check with your legal counsel and call me on bullshit if you think it's bullshit. But the comment that I made to a very earnest person in the audience was, I asked them, if you go buy this, PlayStation 2 game, what did you buy? And they're like, oh, I bought the game. I'm like, well, you have the game at home, but what did you actually buy? What do you own? And he's like, well, I own the game. And I said, no, you own the plastic of the box that the game came in. You own the paper that's the cover of the game. You own the ink that is on the paper that tells you what is in the box, but you don't own the rights to the pattern of that ink on the box, right? That is a copywritten piece of material. So you don't own the right to do whatever you want with that from a commercial perspective. You own the plastic on the disc, you own the metal that's inside of it, but you don't own the right to the pattern of the pits that are on the disc. And you have a right to use license from the company for the content that is on the disk. That's what you own. You own the plastic, the metal, the paper, the ink, but you own nothing else beyond that. Now, when we actually look at the practical application of that, right, it is sure you own the game. You have the right to go ahead and use it on the devices it was intended for. You can give it to a friend to go ahead and play, all of those things there. But it's really important when we talk about what ownership means. Ownership doesn't mean you get to just do anything you want with that content, because again, we have laws in place to protect IP and rights holders, while also striking a fair and equitable balance with consumer rights, which I'm a huge advocate for as well. So when we talk about letting people own the game they bought, I get the sentiment here. And as a game kind of historian and somebody that works in game preservation, it pains me when something has only been released digitally and then disappears forever. And then we've not had the opportunity to find a copy, back that up, preserve that for future history, right? Super important as we go forward. Okay, I spent way too much time on this one piece of news, but you can see where my heart lies, right, with that stuff. Let me take a sip of tea and we'll go ahead and check out the next news article here. Oh, Japan's National Museum of Nature and Science adds PS2 to Future Technology Heritage Registry. Oh, okay. I didn't see this one out there. As a news and brief article of a short format, link to an official source for more information. Read more about the story here. So the PS2 was now added to what was it? The Japan's National Museum of Nature and Science, Future Technology Heritage Registry. PS2 was a weird machine when it came out. The weirdest, of course, was the PS3, right? When I say weird, I mean it was a crazy architecture that had incredible ambition. And if you could harness that power, you could do amazing things with it. I wish Mark Delora was on here today, because Mark was one of the souls that had to go out and teach game developers how to go and program on the PS2, and more specifically the PS3. And actually, I believe that's really where he leaned in, was on the PlayStation 3 with its cell processor. And I don't know if you remember this, but at the time the cell processor launched in the PlayStation 3, the whole idea was that you'll have phones with cell processors, you'll have refrigerators with cell processors, you'll have TVs with cell processors. And that way, if they're all connected on the network, we can use all of those cell processor units to compile or run a game. So the more devices you have, maybe the more expansive a game, or the more the crazier and inventive things they could do with it. And it was really distributed grid computing inside the walls of your home is the idea behind it. And it never came to fruition that way. Yeah, Tom, it got it exactly right. Yeah, it was madness. Total pain in the ass. All right, so I'm going to share with you a quick story about the development of the cell processor and the development of the Xbox 360. So back when I was at Sun Microsystems, I used to have a radio show called Shift Radio, and I interviewed a whole bunch of game developers and technologists and people kind of in the game space. One of them being MC Frontalot, right, the godfather of nerdcore rap. But I interviewed a husband and wife team named I think it was David Shep and Mickey Phipps. And I'm going to go ahead and look up the book right now to make sure that I have it right. Uh, let's see. Yes, it was Mickey Phipps, right, and David Shippey. That's it, David Shippey. So the race for a new game machine was about these two these two folks that worked at IBM, and they were working with Sony on the cell processor, right? The cell processor architecture. And so the whole idea here was, after the PlayStation 2 and Microsoft's now coming at us, with Xbox, we're going to get together and we're going to, really drive, we're really going to go in and take a bite out of the market. We're going to claw all of that back. We're going to retain that leadership position. And what had happened at the time was they were running this big organization, and you had a PowerPC core, which is what IBM was producing at the time. And IBM, the PowerPC cores actually powers a number of game consoles, including ones like the GameCube. And so what had happened was while they were building this, Microsoft, who was looking to build their next platform, the Xbox 360, came to IBM and said, "Hey, we are really interested in understanding what your platforms look like, what your future tech looks like around processors." And after going through the architectural reviews and nothing quite landing, one ambitious IBM representative said, "Well, there is this thing that we're kind of working on," but didn't disclose what it was, but kind of pointed to what the PowerPC core architecture was going to look like. And that's the one that Microsoft said, "That's what we want, right? We want to go ahead and build on that." So now, with a big check in hand, um, David and Mickey had to go ahead and build a separate kind of shadow engineering group in the company that was going to be working directly with Microsoft on this new processor. And they needed to make sure that one group didn't find out about the other. So they had this incredible division, not of just labor, but of security and identity. Like, people didn't realize there were two competing groups that were now building processors that were going to release at the same time in the same era for two of the three principal consoles in market. And what is super interesting, and it was just fascinating to hear their story. Again, being a husband and wife team, working together on this, again, really fascinating. But I thought the most fascinating part of their story was the approach that the two companies took to the way they developed their next generation console at the time. Sony was very much into the precision of the processors, making sure that the thing was just elegant. And if you could really harness it, this really crazy, elegant platform, you could do amazing things there. Microsoft, due to the time that they had then inked the deal with them and the speed at which they had to get to market, they started doing what's called a tape out, right, of the processor. And a tape out is basically you tape out the mask for the die. They go ahead and make the processors, then you test them. And they built in what are called chicken switches. And chicken switches were literally parts of the processor that had these not physical gates, but these gates on it where if it didn't work, you could just close the gate. And when you run the tape out the next time, it still produces that on the die, but it doesn't allow access to it. So it's a way to quickly test a bunch of things. If things don't work, you kind of shut them off, run remanufacture the processor and test it again. And I think they went through two different runs before they locked in on the third. I think that's what it was. And they were just like, "Okay, this doesn't work. Just throw chicken switch these areas and we'll fix it in software." So Sony's was about really precision and this elegant, architecture we hadn't seen before. Microsoft was just like, let's get it to work. And whatever doesn't work, we'll just go ahead and fix it in software and be on our way. And that is how both machines came to market at the same time, with these two incredible folks working at one company had to produce these competing platforms for those competing companies without either group knowing about each other. Fascinating book, The Race for a New Game Machine. Definitely go ahead and check it out. And the story was so compelling that it just sticks out in my mind, right? That's why I still remember that. So definitely go ahead and check that out. So yeah, PS2 was a bit wacky, PS3 even wackier. But again, with the right developers, you could really, harness the power of that stuff and build amazing things, right? Let's see, what other news do we have here? And what other news has crossed your notice recently? Go ahead and hit me in the comments. Let me know. Let's see. Former devs until unknown. Let's see. Zynga exits Web3 project Sugartown. Mobile company sold all of its assets to new firm D20. Again, we are still working through the application of these new technologies and finding their place within the games industry. So important to experiment, important to go ahead and test and figure out that path forward. But there's a lot we don't know yet, right? So let's just continue to play with those before we commit right to them. Oh, here we go. I didn't see this news here, so I'm discovering it along with you. Co-creator of Wizardry, Andrew C. Greenberg, has died, age 67. Wizardry is cited as inspiration for many seminal RPGs, including Fire Emblem and Final Fantasy. Was first reported by PC Gamer, announced by Facebook. Greenberg, longtime friend and collaborator Robert Woodhead. Together, the men created the 1981 game Wizardry, proving grounds of the Mad Overlord, one of the world's first role-playing games, complete with a party of characters with individual strengths and weaknesses. Let's see. Wizardry is cited as the inspiration behind a list of seminal RPGs, including Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy, and Dragon Quest. My apologies and condolences to the Greenberg family. Wizardry actually has been on my mind a little bit lately because our wonderful friends over at Digital Eclipse, now owned by Atari. So, yay for Micah, and the whole team over there. They had just done a release of Wizardry, Proving Grounds to the Mad Overlord, in a completely new 3D engine, enhanced graphics, enhanced gameplay. You can download it on Steam, and it's pretty awesome. So underneath, one of the things they do really well there is underneath the graphics is the actual original code, right? So you're playing the game just with this whole new coat of, varnish, right, over the top of it. Really, really gorgeous. And Wizardry was just a game that kind of escaped my notice when I was younger because I had a VIC 20. I didn't have a Commodore 64. I didn't have an Apple II, right? So Wizardry really wasn't within kind of my wasn't quite within my field of view back when it originally released. But being able to go back and play the game now, go ahead and see the original version. I do believe in the new remake that they did, you can actually pull up in a corner window, the actual wireframe graphics of the original Wizardry while you're playing it. So you can see that they're mapped one to one. Really extraordinary. So if you haven't played the original Wizardry, now is the right time to do it. And it's available for download on Steam. So definitely go check it out. But once again, condolences to the Greenberg family. And thank you to Andrew for helping to create a game that launched so many others in that very important space of games. 60% of Brits don't consider careers in the creative sector as real jobs. I can't comment on that because I haven't read it, but that sounds a lot like, old man yelling at clouds, what is an influencer anyway, type of thing. Let's see. What's another good one here? NetEase. Oh, we are still seeing some layoffs there. I know there was another one that was listed. Rocksteady reported lays off staff following Suicide Squad woes. Yeah, just again, very unfortunate, and our best wishes to all that were affected there. Argonaut Games returns as a publisher after a 20-year hiatus. Okay, this was a story that we actually talked about in the audio-only stream that we did last week because I was traveling and I couldn't be in studio to keep, the stream together and everything. Argonaut has a really amazing and unique history, right? Argonaut, of course, was, we had Dylan Cuthbert, who worked, I believe, over at Argonaut, and Jez San over there, of course, founder of Argonaut. And they were the group that actually created the Super FX chip for the Super Nintendo. So game like Star Fox, coming out there. And Dylan, I still need to get Dylan on our Games Industry Legends series to interview him, but he talks about, creating a 3D engine on the Game Boy by basically hacking Game Boy, then showing it to Nintendo, and Nintendo saying, "How did you do this? You're right. Can you work with us?" type of thing. But this game that they're showing here, Croc, Legend of the Gobos. So if you don't know this game, this was supposed to be the Super Mario 64 killer, right, for the PlayStation and for the Sega Saturn. Clearly, it wasn't, but it is an absolute freaking hidden gem in those libraries. If you've never played Croc before, you are truly missing out on this wonderful little character, a really beautifully crafted world, and gameplay that once you kind of got used to the way the camera system worked was awesome. It is one of my top 10 games on the Sega Saturn. I like it better on the Saturn than even on the PlayStation. Mark Delore gave me crap about that last week and said, well, that remains to be seen. Doesn't remain to be seen. That is the truth. I love it on the Sega Saturn, and it is a great, great platformer. So definitely go ahead and check it out if you haven't ever experienced Croc, Legend of the Gobos. It launched in 1997. It's the first of a planned slate of classic Argonaut IP and existing titles for both current and retro gaming platforms. Cannot wait to see what they did. Yeah, here you go. They were known for developing the Star Glider series and Star Fox for the SNES in 1993. I'm thrilled to see the Argonaut name back after 20 years away. Yay, says Sam. Argonaut was always about pushing the boundaries of what's possible in gaming. I'm excited to see how the relaunched Argonaut games builds on that legacy, starting with Croc, Legend of the Gobos remaster. Here's the really cool thing, too. It baffles me, that companies that were around and really breaking ground in the industry early on are sitting on a massive backlog of IP that is just ripe for reintroduction to a whole new audience of game players and their parents. Like, we're now in this space where it was the kids that grew up playing all this stuff that now have families where their kids are older and they're playing together. They're still playing games. You now have in the world 2, 3, in some cases, maybe in a 4th generation squeaking in at the end there, that play video games and play together. So EA, I'm looking at you. Your backlog of content from the earliest days of Electronic Arts is amazing. I would love to see some of those incredible games be reintroduced, right? Who wouldn't love a remake of Archon with modern sensibilities, or so many different Hard Hat Mac and a whole bunch of these different games. So hopefully this is going to be a continuing wave of developers that were really pushing the boundaries of what games could be in the earlier era of the games industry, bringing those classic games back. I cannot wait to go in and play this remake. And we'll have to go ahead and do a full playthrough on Rewind, which should be a lot of fun. So that's it. It was just me rambling into the microphone today. Like I said, as our cohorts are away doing a variety of different things this week. So it was just me. And it was you, and we're just hanging out here on Boss Rush. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Make sure if you want to go ahead and look through another selection of games from the Atari Lynx library, right? One of my favorite handheld game machines of all time. Actually, one of my favorite game machines of all time. Co-created by the incredible brain trust of RJ Michael and Dave Needle. And we're going to play through some of the hidden gems in the Atari Lynx series. And that's going to be on the AWS for Games channel on YouTube today, September 6th of 2024 at 3 p.m. Eastern, again, on the AWS for Games channels on YouTube and Twitch. So I'm looking forward to having my co-host back next week as we dive into big game news for the week. And with that, my name again is Chris Melissinos, Principal Evangelist for Video Games here at AWS. And this has been Boss Rush. So thanks for hanging out with me and let me just chew through a bit of interesting news this week. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day, a great weekend, and we'll see you next week on Boss Rush. Thanks, gang.